Hi, Terry.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Okay, I had to turn my speaker up. I couldn't hear you. I turn it down when I go to the library.
Good idea. Well,
And just to let you know, I'm across the street from the German American Society, which may mean the connection's a little weaker. There was no place to park in front of it today.
okay.
So if you know, I mean, in the past, I've lost the signal and I've been able to, get back on, but it might be weak. Seems like when they close down at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, sometimes it interrupts the signal.
So other than that, how are you?
Tired.
You're over 20.
Yes, quite a bit over 20. It just seems like I've been going from one thing to another, and oh, it's time to leave. Oh, it's time to do this. Oh, it's time to do that. Trying to get ready for a show swap meet or whatever that I've got the first Saturday of December, and because I know it's going to take a while. I think I told you I bought this collection, and I'm going to take some of it to sell.
I saw that the train group is reopening their clubhouse that has
That's the layout down by in Albina area,
I don't know. I've never been.
Columbia Gorge.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. They have tour, or they open their layout every November, I think, normally.
Well, they didn't last year.
Yeah. Oh no, I know they didn't. I'm not a member. I've been in there many times.
Don't you have trains too?
Oh yeah. And I know a lot of the members there. I'm a member of the National Railway Historical Society and the train collectors and the toy train operators and the rail museum down by OMSI and also one of the groups that's restoring the locomotives, although I don't work on it. I did many years ago.
Well, I think we still have a few minutes. So
Oh yeah. I like to get up here and make sure everything works properly. If I had to go someplace else, it would take me a few minutes. I could go to the Gregory Heights Library parking lot, but I don't really like that. It seems like there's quite a few unsavory people that go through there, even during the daytime when I used to go up there during the day. So I'm not too anxious to try their parking lot at night.
that makes sense.
Can you hear that?
I hear you.
Okay, well, it's cold and I just turned my motor on and got the fan going and I didn't know if you could hear it or not.
Nope, you're fine.
Okay.
Hi, Tamara.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm good.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Terry. Did you hear that we've got a meeting tomorrow on Zoom at noon, Terry?
Yeah. I got a thing from Allison. I'll be at the library, so that'll be a little easier to.
Neat.
And as far as the Midland Library, I mean, it's like an echo chamber, and people talk loud there. So if I turn it down, people can't hear it anyway, but I can hear it. So it works out pretty well. I was at the Gregory Heights Library for a thing that Mingus had, because they were open on a Monday night. And they were all upset that I was, and I had it turned way down, but it's like it's a total different ball game there.
It's a pretty tight space there too.
Yeah. Well, I was in a corner in the front there, but
Yeah.
they didn't, and I had it turned way down. Hello, Sharon.
Hey, gang. Hey,
Are we a gang?
Reese's peanut butter cups from Halloween.
How many Halloween people did you have?
We had about 30. They were a little slow getting started, but we had about 30, I would say. It was nice.
So
I don't think any of my neighbors did it this year. I didn't.
did you see the big parade come through, Tamara?
I didn't. I missed it. I
So
heard about it
we
after
had-
the fact.
We bought 150 big bars because we are those people that hand out the big bars.
Uh-huh.
And we went through 100 of them before 5:30. So I went to the store and bought another 100. I think we had 240.
Oh my God. That's great.
Crazy.
Yeah, we had
How
over
many?
100.
240
Trick-or-treaters.
trick-or-treaters?
Yeah.
Cool.
How many of them were repeats?
I don't know. They were coming so fast and they came in like packs of, 20 or 50. It was amazing.
Well, we
even
only
in
had 30.
Even in the good times lately, I mean, like I said, I didn't do it this year. I didn't do it last year. And I don't think any of my neighbors did it this year because I went out to see if porch lights were on and they weren't. But I'd only get 25 to 35 most of the time.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but
Well, did you put your cell phone next door as
We
you did?
You did? Oh, well, that may be it.
That makes a difference. I did too. And
Oh, you did?
we got
Oh,
over 100.
wow.
Yeah, they were just dumping people out on our doorstep.
Truckloads of them.
Truckloads, just lots of folks coming out of the vans and stuff.
We had one little kid come, he was dressed as Batman. He was probably 3. And it had padded muscles in it.
Uh-huh.
And he was so animated and he wanted to show us all the muscles that he had. And he just cracked me. He was so cute. I love trick-or-treaters.
I do too. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorite holidays.
Oh, it's so fun.
It's fun. Yeah.
So fun.
I guess
All
we
right,
are
where's our
it.
gang here? Let's go ahead and get started, I
Yeah,
say.
let's go.
You know,
All right.
Tamara, I don't think you were here at the last meeting. We
I wasn't.
finished in an hour.
Woohoo! All right. Well, let's get going.
Hey,
Hey, we don't even have Scott here yet, so who knows?
I did hear back from him just a few minutes ago. So he did get the link and said, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just get going. Does everyone have a copy of the agenda with them?
yes.
Okay. All right.
I do not.
Okay, we'll begin by introductions. My name is Tamara DeRitter. I am the chair of Rose City Park Neighborhood, and I'm co-chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. And I'll turn it over to Kelly.
So Kelly Davis, I'm co-chair with Tamara of the Land Use and Transportation Committee and a board member. Sharon?
I'm Sharon Fuchs. I am a member of the Land Use and Transportation Committee.
Terry Parker. I'm a member of the Land Use Transportation Committee and the rep to CNN. I'm also a board member.
Okay, we've got someone calling in. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, this is Ben Joy.
Hey, Ben. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're doing introductions right now.
Excellent.
So we have another person with the last digits of their phone number is 6035.
That is also me. So I dialed in with my phone because I wasn't sure that I would get good audio through the portal.
Okay. You're doubly here. Congratulations.
Thank
You may
you.
want to mute one of them so that you can, you don't get echo.
That's what I will do. Thank you.
You bet. So tonight, now you got a face. Whoa. Hey.
And
Okay.
he's related to Kelly Joy, who we all love.
Yes.
Yes, that is my wife.
She's wonderful. Yes. And I have an agenda here. We go through the minutes for review and approval. Then we have the welcome and introduction of and land acknowledgement. I didn't print that out, darn it. Then we have agenda revisions and approval. Actually, the minutes are after the agenda revisions and approval. Then new business. Included in that is items from committee members, second story addition onto 48 street on 48th Avenue, in a house, and check in with members for issues of concern. And then we have Scott Cohen with Slow Streets. Following that, we've got updates, and that includes the 64th and Brazil, safe routes to schools, and then the 72nd Bikeway, next steps, cut through traffic, Zach, who is not here yet, and then 60th and Hoslo, and Terry's is going to talk about that, then Historic Resources Code. I'm going to give you an update, construction projects, Uncle Bank, tennis courts, next steps, and then Cully Tip.
What did you say I was going to talk about?
What's going on at 60th and Halsey? And not
Haslo.
Halsey, excuse me, Haslo.
Well, there's nothing new.
Well, I think
We're just putting in the minutes for this week what we found out after the last meeting, Terry.
Okay. I'm sorry. You were reading the minutes. I was thinking you were reading the agenda. I'm sorry.
That is the agenda.
it
So
is the
okay.
agenda. We're circling back around to see if you found out anything, and so
Okay.
what you report will be in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda at this point?
nope.
Not that I can think of.
And I have to apologize. I don't have a copy of the land acknowledgement and neighborhood agreements with me. So I'm going to ask if it would be okay if we pass on those today.
Are they on the website?
They are on the website, or they should
Okay.
be. I've asked them to.
Easily found?
Easily found, should be.
Okay, that's good.
I've
I
asked them-
referred to the website.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so next we have the minutes for review and approval, and I wasn't there, so
I reviewed the minutes and they were fine with me. You're much more eloquent. I'm more A, C person. You fill in the blanks. Do a good jelly, but they were fine.
And Zach helped me with the minutes too last time.
Right.
hey. So
Terry, did you read the minutes?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't. I was going to, and I didn't. I
well,
will accept it. If you think they're okay, I'll accept that.
I move that we accept the minutes as submitted.
I second it.
all those
I
in
read them,
favor-
I accept it.
Okay.
all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
All that abstain abstain, aye, 'cause I didn't read them,
Okay.
and I wasn't at the meeting. And then all those that say nay. Tough, no, say nay. Okay, motion passes. I did it backwards. Okay, next we have new business. Are there new items from the committee members?
Just that meeting
My-
tomorrow.
Yeah, just to let folks know that folks from the Land Use, Transportation, Open Space Committee for Central Northeast Neighbors have been invited to a Zoom meeting tomorrow at noon. And the discussion is about putting a trail inside the perimeter of the golf course. So the idea is that there would be a public trail inside the fenced area that would be open to the public. Right now, one of the things that's an issue is golf courses are being looked at for being transferred to high density, low income housing. And so one of the points of that I have put forward to neighbors is like, you got to figure out a way that this is more useful to more people. And they actually came back with the idea of a path going around the golf course. So I think it might be a really good way in which it can become a healthful thing for members in the community. But anyway, we're going to be introduced with the idea tomorrow. And my understanding is there's money from Metro and there's money from the city that could be behind this. And so I think it could really happen. So I'd be interested in your thoughts, if anyone has any thoughts at this point, but we're just going.
Brought it forth. Who brought it forth to CNN?
Well, it was brought up by Kristen Gustav, one of the neighbors that has been interested in actually getting the path from 62nd up to Sacramento with Ed Gorman. Anyway,
Path.
yeah, because we had talked about that being a bicycle path.
For Rose City Park is what you're
Right.
talking.
She's moving. Her house is sold. I don't know where she moved to, but
Anyway, the idea is gaining steam as far as folks are concerned.
Here's
very cool.
just a couple of comments from me. Actually three. One, to my knowledge, on the what's known as the back nine, which is the one that's closest to Madison, there is no path at all around the golf course. On the front nine, you can actually walk all the way around the golf course because you've got Rose City Park and there is kind of a path right up next to the fence and along Tillamook. And then you've got a path at the bottom of the bluff and one at the top of the bluff. And the third thing I wanted to bring up is that the one at the bottom of the bluff, particularly, I guess, the people that are preparing the bluffs, oh, that is so dangerous because you could get hit on the head with a golf ball. You need to wear a helmet. And I know when Charles Jordan was Parks Commissioner, he had the same feeling. But it's very well used. I used to use it to walk my dog when I had a dog. And so I question, what I'm questioning here is, at least on the front nine, the need to do something. On the back nine, yeah, makes a whole lot of sense.
well, putting it inside the
think
golf course makes it in the golf course and makes the golf course become a valuable thing.
Well, the path at the bottom of the hill is basically inside the golf course. At the bottom of the bluff, that's already basically inside the golf course.
Well, that's not a public path. People use it, but it's not listed as a public path. They really don't want people to use it because of flying golf balls.
Well, what are they going to do? Okay, that's my point. That's my
Okay,
point, though.
okay,
If they're going to put a path around it, you're still going to have the flying golf balls.
Okay. Anyway, let's not worry about the logistics right now.
Okay. Anyway, that just
But I
comment.
just wanted to bring it out as that this is coming up, and
Okay.
I appreciate the concerns. about
It is
golf
a very different thing thinking about the path that is unmaintained along the bottom of Sacramento, or the horrible along Hancock. I mean, it's horribly maintained. Think about Glendevere. Glendevere has a wonderful path. I would love a path like that around there. I think that'd be great. And you know what? They've solved getting hit by golf balls, whatever the risk is. I think it would be a wonderful thing to have a path that people could walk without twisting an ankle. And, you know, I'm getting to be that age. So
Me too. Okay,
love the idea.
thank you. I'll pass that on, and I also will pass on the concern about the golf balls hitting people.
I'm hoping to be at the meeting, so,
Okay, so that's tomorrow at noon that we're
Right.
having that. The next item is there is a second story addition being asked for the house at 2411 Northeast 48th Avenue. And what they're proposing is, or asking for, is an adjustment, because right now the existing house is at 3 feet and 8 inches from the property line. I think maybe it's the eaves are 3 feet and 8
It's
inches.
the eve. It's the eve.
The eave. And so what they're asking for is to make it the
2
same
foot.
or even less invasive at the second story.
2 feet 8. They want to encroach more on the property line or
No.
less.
They
Okay.
want to do it less by a couple inches because the eaves won't be quite as far out on the second story that they're adding on, but they want to keep it as a stacked building, which makes sense to me.
Did
Anyway,
anybody look, I looked on the Google map and pulled up the picture of the house. It's a beautiful house. And it has fairly large eaves. I'm going to say it's probably a 20s house. I don't remember I just looked at the picture basically. And I hope that they keep the character of the house if they put a second story on it, because I don't know what you call the style of the house, but it's absolutely a gorgeous house.
So if they're going to have more space between the property line and the eve on the second floor, why do they need an adjustment?
because it still encroaches on the 5-foot setback,
Oh, the file, okay, which is current code.
which is current code.
I thought
Hmm.
3 foot setback was the code now.
It's 3 feet at the eaves and 5 feet to the side of the
Okay.
Hey, why don't you, if you have the details of it, can you share that with us, Kelly?
Yeah, right now they have 3 foot 8 inches from the side property line is the face of the house, and the eave is at 2 foot 9 inches. And so when this is done, and it's supposed to be 5 feet to the face of the building and 3 feet to the eave. So they are saying that they want to reduce the 5 foot setback to 3 foot 8 inches and have a 1 foot eve. And, you know, typically unless we hear vehement opposition from neighbors, we usually say, yeah, that seems fine to me.
Have neighbors been notified?
Yeah, you have to with this kind of a proposal. And I
Remember
haven't
that,
from it.
remember the corner house on Klickitat and 54th from the lawyer that built the garage ADU on the top of it, and the neighbor immediately to the south sawed down her fence. Do you remember this? He took a chainsaw and sawed her fence down.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah, and they both came to the meeting, and he didn't want it at all, but we allowed that. We said it was okay. Yeah, she put the fence on either on his property or right on, something was weird. Anyway, he asked her to
remember
remove it. She wouldn't do it. And he took a chainsaw to it and took it down. And then you also notified her that her new fence was not properly put. She had it right along the sidewalk as opposed to a setback. And she told you that she thought she could win in a hearing, and you told her you didn't think she could. And anyway, they agreed, and we allowed that additional encroachment on the property line from that ADU.
Yes,
So I think we should be consistent unless there's neighbor opposition.
I agree. We've been joined by Zachary. Hi, Zachary. He's a member.
Hi,
of our-
everybody. And my little one is curious.
Very good.
There's another person on also. Her name is Anya Picard, unless it's her husband. Anya, are you on?
And
Okay.
Tanya?
Yeah, we're both
She
here.
goes
We're-
by Anya. She goes by Anya.
Yeah, we're wanting to listen in on the conversation about Sacramento and 72nd Drive.
Got it. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, hearing
Oh,
no,
I would move that we don't oppose. I don't know that we have to write a support letter.
I'll second that.
So I would move that we don't oppose this proposal by the neighbor.
I second it.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. All right. Then the next item is check-in for member issues of concern. I'm not sure.
We did that at the end of the meeting last time. Zach had left early, so it was just Kelly, Terry, and I at
Okay,
the meeting. And we just checked in to see how the meeting went and if everything felt okay, and it worked.
okay. So do we want to move that check-in to at the very end?
Yeah, I'd put it at the end.
Okay. Do that. Then, I don't think we have Scott here yet. Cohen. So we can't really step into slow streets. So why don't we, if it's okay with everyone, that we just go ahead and move with, to talk about 64th and Brazil.
well, don't we need to hear Scott's presentation first before we can talk about 64th and Sacramento? Isn't that part of Scott's presentation?
It's kind of related.
Kind of is.
And I would like him to hear my comments.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
They are two different projects, the intersection and the change there and the slow streets project. But as I noted in my email, I have asked them at least twice to coordinate with each other and try to have a comprehensive plan in conjunction with the neighborhood to put that together in a nice way. So yeah, I'd like to wait for him to come.
Okay. Then maybe we can step into the 72nd bikeway comments.
Did we ever get them? Did we ever get the public comments?
I never got anything new.
No. I mean, I looked through every email I had, and you've asked him now at least verbally at the meeting and at least 3 times written. I
Right.
think that's pretty outrageous.
Not the comment, not necessarily the comments, but I think that the 72nd bikeway also plays in with the path around the golf course. And, you know, we should probably bring that up as part of the discussion tomorrow, Tamara.
Yeah. I think we might have Scott Cohen coming on board here.
So have we finished with the 72nd Avenue Bikeway discussion? Because all we have outstanding there is the comments that we're reviewing.
Well, I'd like to hear what Anya and her husband, if they have any comments. I'd like to hear what they say. They live right at the top and a little bit to the east. Is that correct, Anya? Hey,
Hey there. Well, actually, we stare down on it all day
Yeah.
long.
Right out that
It's-
window.
We're directly
Okay.
above it on the corner of 70th and Sacramento.
okay.
And I guess, our point of view from living with the craziness that happens on 72nd all night long is that whatever can be done to reduce
slow it
traffic
down,
on that street.
Calm it.
If it becomes a one-way street, that would probably be the best thing.
Yeah.
Just in the short, decade we lived here, I don't know how many accidents we've seen
Mhm.
from traffic
Mhm.
coming up from the golf course and not stopping at the top. So
Yeah.
that's just our perspective, of course, from what we see on a daily basis being above it.
Yeah, I also feel really strongly about the safety issue of the choices people make about using that road, because plenty of people walk it, run it, push strollers, and there is, in some parts, there's absolutely no shoulder. So although I'm not thrilled with the idea of having that turn into a one-way, just in terms of my own convenience of driving, I am very happy to give that up for the safety for the neighborhood and the traffic calming aspect.
So that is what they are proposing. is
Yeah.
to
Well,
make-
I'd like to-
That's the last thing I heard.
And I'd love to hear where we're at with that, because that's one thing, since we're technically not, part of Rose City Park.
Yeah, we're
The
Roseway.
information we're able to get is very minimal. And so, unfortunately, reaching out to Peabody isn't the easiest thing to do to get just general information. No offense there, Scott, but the one thing I noticed too, we've had the best of luck with limiting the crime situation and the other issues down there by reminding law enforcement that
Mhm.
that road is under the purview of parks right now, at least according to the property boundaries, and that has so far worked. But that's a pretty slippery gray area, So
Yeah.
whatever can be done officially to really get better control over that corridor would be awesome.
Yeah, Brian, it's really hard to watch a lot of what's going on and trying to keep an eye on whatever kind of behavior and illegal stuff that might be occurring, and accidents and things like that too.
Like what illegal stuff?
Well, let's see, between
Dumping.
between the dumping,
sleeping,
well, it's not
camping.
even the camping issue. It's really
Mhm.
around the prostitution, drug use, and
Yeah.
illegal dumping that goes on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
Prostitution and drug use on that road?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All the pullouts along the golf
Yeah.
course down there,
Uh-huh.
just walk down there around
Yeah.
1, 2 a.m. every day, vehicles in and out of there every 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you say
Is
more
there-
about?
It's a different point of view from this end of the bluff, I'll tell you.
yeah.
that.
Is there still somebody that's basically sleeping there in a van
no,
continually?
Cliff
A
was
different van.
Well, there's a
Well,
new
different van, yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a new van, but Cliff, who was there for a long time, in some ways was our guardian of the street at night. But
Yeah, he was very respectful and cleaned up, and
he was finally asked to leave after we had the issue with the gypsy camp that was there a few months ago. Some of you may have seen it down
Is
there.
that where the boat was in the,
Yeah, the boat. Yeah, the boat.
okay,
Yeah, that was an interesting situation. Thankfully, we got this end of the neighborhood to basically constantly call the non-emergency number for 2 days straight until they couldn't take it anymore, and they asked everyone to leave.
when I earlier in the pandemic, when I was using the Gregory Heights Library parking lot, I drove that street every day. I
Hmm.
live below Rose City Park. My concern is that if you make it one way, is you're going to increase mileage on Tillamook, on Sacramento, because you got to go clear over to 82nd or down to 60th to get around it. It's going to increase traffic on 60th and Snake Hill. And it's just not, it doesn't balance the rest of the traffic because it's such a big area to go around.
That's a fair point of view, I would say, in that it would to a degree limit traffic. Force people to take alternate forms of transport, avenues to go through. One thing I'd offer though is when you look at the differences, so if you look at 60th or you look at some of the other streets, those are actual streets. Okay, the 72nd Drive, if you look at how it was designed originally, it was a thoroughfare through a park, through a golf course. It has a dangerous or semi-blind, I shouldn't say dangerous because that's kind of making a judgment, but it's a semi-blind T intersection at the top of the bluff where you really can't visually see the traffic and kids and other things going down that bikeway. And when you're at the bottom, you're at another T intersection. So I guess outside of the locals that are really living there, I get that it's a little bit more of an inconvenience to go around the golf course. What it will limit though is the constant cut through traffic that you get. And I can tell you, especially pre-COVID, well, even back again now, at rush hour, people are using Sacramento, they're using 72nd Drive to avoid being on Sandy and avoid being on Gleason and other things, and they're avoiding all the heavier intersections and they're cutting through the golf course between 7 and 9 a.m. and between 4 and 6 p.m. every day.
I heard there's about 700 cars that go through there on a daily basis. Now, I don't know whether that's correct or not.
Well, I'd like to see what the pre-COVID numbers were too, because the dynamic over the past couple of years has definitely changed, of course. So I think you'd need to look over about a 5-year period to really get a good read on it these days. But nonetheless, you think about how narrow that street is with no stripes, no striping, with no clear shoulder or safe shoulder or sidewalks for that matter, and no semi-blind intersections you're coming up to. It's not necessarily a safe place for even 700 cars a day. That's a lot for a road that was never designed as even a city street.
Right.
What about street lighting there? Is there
Pardon?
street lighting?
Yes.
Is there street lighting on
Yes.
There's some lighting. It's fairly minimal because of the cover of the golf course.
Yeah, the tree cover.
I can
I'm
remember when
thinking-
they put that in. I've lived in the neighborhood long enough. I remember when it was a dark street at night.
Oh, I bet.
I
Yeah.
would think making it more remote by turning it into a one-way is going to increase. It's going to make it a more sheltered area for cars to park and not to be seen.
But not if
I
the
would think
pullouts
better-
go away.
If the
Pardon me?
pullouts go away because of how it's designed as more of
Yeah.
a biking, walking area, and if it becomes a one-way street, one thing I'll say, and even the officer that lives a couple streets away in our neighborhood has mentioned is that is known as a cut-through escape route. So is Sacramento in general.
For criminals. And
If it becomes a one-way street, it's not as easy an avenue for people to cut through, in either direction. So it can be a way to limit various activities that are going on.
Yeah.
And, I think one thing I see, you talk to the contractors work in the neighborhood now, Sacramento is known as one of the riskier streets to work on now as a contractor due to theft. And so if there's any way we can limit the traffic that is happening on these streets, just general cut through traffic, it's got to be better for the neighborhoods in general.
Just as a FYI to you folks, if they do what they want to do with Sandy, with the Rose Lane project and right turns, all that sort of stuff, where there's only going to be one through lane in a lot of areas, you're going to get a lot more traffic on Sacramento because it's going to create a whole lot more cut through traffic.
For the golf course.
So there's a lot of really
60th
valid concerns. A lot of valid concerns about that area down there. I walk it with my dog. I ride my bike through there. We drive through it. I don't know that one way solves some of those problems, and we need to figure out how to solve those problems. Have we looked at, so one of the things I think always feels incredibly dangerous is walking down there with no shoulder or riding my bike up it with no shoulder. There is a lot of shoulder that could be developed all the way through. I mean, so go to the west side, excuse me, the east side of the road. If you could do a walkway all the way up and then straight up to Sacramento and keep people off of the street from a safety standpoint, at least you would keep people and dogs and neighbors safe if you did that. I'm not sure that either direction solves some of the other, you know, the prostitution and the theft and all that stuff. I mean,
Ben,
that's
that was
something else, but we could certainly get rid of those. I love the idea of getting rid of those pullouts because I just sends me through the ceiling when I drive through there and I see all the debris that goes to the side. So if somehow that could be taken care of and a walkway put up that people could safely walk up through there with good lighting, that would, it seems to me that would be a decent way to go.
Ben, I'm with you 100% on that because that's what I've been saying for a long time is put a shared pathway on the east side of that and a way up to Sacramento. Problem is PBOT doesn't want to spend the money.
no,
All they
that's,
want to do is repaint the street.
Okay, hold on.
hang on a second. That was surveyed just before the COVID lockdown. The survey crews were there 2 or 3 times right at the top of Sacramento and 70th to put a ADA pathway straight off the bluff down into 72nd Drive. So that was in the plan. And then all of a sudden, then things changed and it became this idea of adjusting the traffic on 72nd Drive. So there was an intention to do that already because they'd already surveyed it.
But I think it's the dollars.
They were supposed to start construction on that in April, May of 2020.
Yeah, let me speak here. My understanding is that they did look at putting an ADA accessible walkway down, but the amount of cost because of the fill and all the engineering that would have to go into it, it would be cost prohibitive. But if they use part of the existing road, it would not be a new structure. It would be a pre-existing non-conforming. And so what they could do is then stripe part of the existing macadam and say, okay, only this much is for the vehicles and this much is going to be for pedestrians and bikes or whatever. But I think that's how they're trying to deal with the ADA issue, is with an existing roadway that's already poured and not necessarily ADA approved grade as it would be built today.
There seems like it's short-sighted to do something like that.
Okay. Good point.
And I agree with that too.
So if we find out more about this project, can you guys put in the chat line contact information? And if we find out more from Winston or from PBOT about that project, we can kind of inform you.
Well, I do think it'll come up tomorrow.
Would one of you read what Scott put in the chat box?
You wrote that there were 1,231 cars northbound and 936 southbound in late September of 2019.
That's
And
per
then-
day.
And then he said that's an average daily count over 3 days, Monday through Wednesday.
That's a lot of use.
That is a lot of use.
And one thing to
That's a lot
consider
of use.
with the kids back in school, with the amount of just traffic that's going back and forth on Sacramento now, with just kids, and the idea of slowing Sacramento, making it more of a walking corridor. You still have to think about the safety issue where 72nd comes back up to Sacramento. We as neighbors, we all drive that. We're all used to what that intersection is like. What about these other, how many northbound, 1,000 northbound cars? Those
1231.
not neighbors that have no idea about that stop sign or how that works or how blind that is. So
They probably
That's a
know now.
3-day
Right?
when we think
That's a
about the
3-day
safety of
total,
it,
and if you divide it by 3, it's still
No,
700 cars a
average.
day.
it's an average.
Terry, that's an average.
That's an average daily
3-day
total.
average.
Oh, is it? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was over a
No.
3-day
No,
tally.
They're probably repeat users. Now, I just want to give you a little history. The speed bumps that are on Sacramento were put in a number of years ago. One reason was to divert traffic, to stop traffic coming onto Sacramento because there were so many cars and so many speeding cars. It didn't go down far enough. I forget where it actually began and ended at that time. And then the people on Alameda were quite upset that we were going to put the speed bumps on Sacramento because then that would divert the traffic over to Alameda, and then they could drive along Alameda to the Methodist Church and access onto Sandy Boulevard. Nonetheless, we were able to get that done, and it did help with traffic calming on Sacramento, including speed. And then now the speed bumps have been extended finally 20, 25 years down the road, further down Sacramento, and then across 57th and on lower Sacramento. So that was a traffic calming maneuver. And that's,
yeah.
a number of years ago.
It's definitely helped when they added the speed bumps farther down. Interestingly, though, they removed several speed bumps, and between 70th and 72nd, they actually removed one of the speed humps, and it actually increased the speed of people cutting the corner on the 70th. So yeah, it's interesting how that goes, right?
That I think had to do with spacing.
Well, yeah.
That's what I've been told. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's been interesting because it's definitely hasn't helped much. But no, but anyway, just to wrap it up on this, and we probably talked this one to death without a lot more information, but just there is a concern, and I hear people like going through, especially us as neighbors, we like going through the golf course. It's convenient. But when we look at the amount of cars a day that are going through there, what's the balance of that? Our personal conveniences versus safety and quieting the neighborhood, I guess, is really the important part to consider here. And if we have to drive an extra half mile or so around the golf course, to a street that's a little wider, maybe that's what needs to happen for the better of the whole neighborhood.
Okay, great. Okay, I will try again and again to get this information about the existing questionnaire results that were
That's the public comments that were put forth when it was put up for public comment.
Yeah. And
maybe Scott can assist.
Find out where we are on the project. So if you put your information, how to reach you into the chat line, that way we can make sure we can notify anyone that's not in our neighborhood about our when we bring this topic back. Sounds good. Okay, at this point, I'd like to turn this over to Scott regarding the slow streets. Scott, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Just before we go to slow streets, what was it that you all are looking for? The comments from the survey on the 70s Greenway?
Right.
When it was put out for public comment, there were X number of comments, and we have asked for a copy of those public comments.
For 72nd Drive specifically, and one of our concerns is how many of them were local comments versus comments coming from the community at large.
Okay.
I don't think they can parse that, but
Yeah,
we just wanted to see
you put a
what they
zip
were.
code in lots of times on some of these.
Okay. I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there should be any issue with data from the survey.
What's his
It might
name,
just be
Tamara?
Winston Stan.
Winston.
Yeah, he's the project manager.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'll talk to Winston. I think that should be fine.
okay. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen. I think, who wasn't here last time when I presented in April? Was every, let
There's
me
about,
rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. Who was here when I presented in April? Raise your hand. Terry and Tamara and Shannon, Zachary. Okay, so not everybody. Okay, I will, I'll try not to belabor for those of you that were here, what I went over before, but I do want to kind of give a little bit of a background about, you know, what Slow Streets is and why we're doing what we're doing for the next phase. So Slow Streets is one of the 3 components of PBOT's Safe Streets initiative, which are our response to the COVID-19 pandemic, along with our Safer Busy Streets, which built pedestrian extensions on busier streets, things like temporary sidewalks or curb extensions, and then also our Healthy Business Permit, which range from things like 5-minute parking areas for pickup drop off all the way to streets closed for business activity, plazas. Slow Streets had a few main goals. We wanted to, at the beginning of the pandemic, you remember how important physical distancing was. So we wanted to make sure that people had a way to get outside, be healthy and active, and have more space on blocks to be able to do that. Playgrounds are closed, schools were closed, gyms were closed. Streets were one of the few places where people could really get outside. So that was a big main goal of the Slow Streets initiative. We also wanted to slow vehicles as they entered onto neighborhood greenways, which are our priority, bicycle and pedestrian routes throughout the city. And then we wanted to raise awareness both for people that were driving and for people that were looking to, be active, to walk or bike or roll, that these were the good streets to be, using as a person, and not a great street, or at least to know that this was going to be a street where they should be expecting people to be on the street. We had at one point over 200 locations citywide with temporary locations. We've taken many out either through partnerships with schools. We've done some school streets, and so we've changed things like that, or we've just removed some because, after a year and a half of temporary traffic control, that just the installations weren't holding up and focused on priority areas. But we did have about 200 at one point, and we really tried to concentrate them in areas of higher need. So PBOT has what's called an equity matrix, which looks at demographic information, income information, language spoken information on a basis. And then we score each of those census tracts, with 10 being the highest score, higher need.
excuse me, Scott?
Yeah.
Can everyone please mute yourself so we can hear Scott? There's several of you that are not muted and
I can't do it with my screen, with the screen shared. I don't
Okay.
think.
Maybe Kelly can do it as a host.
Just hold your breath, Terry. So
Thank you.
anyways, long story short, we tried to focus on areas of higher need, and we had nearly 60% of our installations in areas with an equity matrix score of 7 to 10, and the city average is around 6. We also did a number of different feedback mechanisms. One of them included a text-based survey where we highlighted by the slow installation with like a sign saying, text greenways to this number and take a short survey. We heard from people, that they were able to maintain safe physical distancing on the slow street. We had about 1,000 people that responded to that survey. We also asked people if they felt a stronger sense of community along the slow street. And this. Hey, Nick, do you have the ability to mute? Okay, well, maybe it's not even Nick. The name might just say Nick. If there's a host here, the host can mute everybody, and then I can unmute myself. But anyways, stronger sense of community is important because this is a benefit that can last beyond the pandemic. It's obviously important during the pandemic, but if this kind of installation is helping people get out and feel a sense of ownership in their street, that has benefits beyond just traffic safety, and it's something, you know, we really want to engender not only on our neighborhood greenways, but, you know, all our streets. We want people to feel like, you know, these are streets that are part of their community and that they can use in the way they see fit. So this is basically what slow streets look like throughout most of 2020, until we got into these darker, rainier months, when we started to see just how much damage they were getting inflicted, both intentional and unintentional, through the darker and wetter months. So as we saw that was happening, we started to try and look for a way to create a more resilient structure. And then we also started to evaluate, you know, kind of what the message was that Slow Streets was saying. And so we came up with this kind of infrastructure, basically using a concrete planter. They're about 4 feet in diameter, and using advisory signage that had 15 mile per hour and shared street signage. We liked that instead of the go slow and local access only, because it's clearer. 15 miles an hour is clearer than go slow, and shared street, you know, showing the uses is more clear than local access only. So that's the model that we went to, and we did a lot of shopping around to neighborhoods like yours, and heard generally positive feedback. So this is one style of slow street that's going to be coming for your neighborhood. That you'll see something like this at Sacramento and 70th, Sacramento and the 64th and Brazee spot, and at 53rd and Irving. Some streets are too narrow to put a concrete planter, because it would preclude, in particular, emergency vehicles from making the turn onto the street. So instead of using the concrete planter on narrow streets, we're using what we call a hardened center line, but the product is called Tough Curb. It's like a plastic yellow curb with a plastic reflective wand. Will go on roughly the center line, which essentially will be off center because of the turning radius. And then we'll include those 15 mile per hour and shared street advisory signs on the intersection facing out. So this is going to be at 53rd and Halsey and at 53rd and Gleason, on the south leg of the 53rd and Gleason intersection. This is what the planters look like so far. This is on, I think, Salmon looking eastbound, Salmon at 11th and 12th. They do have pretty good pedestrian benefits. You know, they really do provide a level of protection along the crosswalk. They definitely slow vehicles turning onto the street. You can see here, it doesn't stop anybody from turning onto the street, and this is turning off the neighborhood greenway onto the busier street, but you get the idea. You really have to slow down to make that turnaround there. And that's really what we're trying to really let people raise awareness about the speeds and really slow them as they enter onto a neighborhood greenway. So this is our map of our locations now. They're throughout the city. The orange is showing the temporary locations, and the blue are showing the places where we're planning to update with concrete planters or hardened center line in this first round. So you'll notice, for example, there's a number of orange dots like east of 205. And that's because a lot of those neighborhood greenways have not been built yet. So we don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, by putting in anything in an intersection that might make construction of crosswalks or other pedestrian improvements at those intersections more challenging. So we're waiting for those neighborhood greenways to finish construction before we go and do any sort of slow street infrastructure that would come in afterwards. And then this
Scott?
is in, yes.
We didn't have on our list that the intersection of Alameda and Sandy Boulevard was going to be part of this discussion.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that is a
major spot.
Yeah, it's the feature. Essentially, this is the first kind of location for the work that we talked about a few months back with April about the change at Alameda and Sandy and the signal timing for the Rose Lane project.
Yes, but we didn't talk about, we didn't have that on the list of the sites becoming permanent as a slow street.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Okay, yeah, it's true. We didn't. I mean, but it's not, it doesn't really change anything about the operation of the street. It's essentially a sign in the street.
Well, yes, but did notification go to these property owners?
No, because it's not, it hasn't been designed yet. So we haven't designed the 57 Sandy and Alameda one yet. So that's why it wasn't not on this list because it hasn't been designed yet. But another notification will go out to those area residents and property owners when that design goes in and the work is scheduled.
Okay, I thought we were gonna make all the decisions tonight and I was getting fearful that we didn't get notifications made. Okay,
But that one's just not ready for design yet.
okay,
I mean, part of it is because it is a more challenging design. So it's probably gonna take the engineer more work.
okay,
And I think, that's gonna be one that's probably gonna get wrapped up in the bigger conversations around the Rose Lane and Greenway project that we talked about, that was 5-6 months ago now, wasn't it? So these are the locations in the neighborhood that we're focusing on right now. With the 57th and Alameda one not in design yet, but the 64th and Sacramento and Brazee, 70th, 53rd and Halsey, 53rd and Irving, and 53rd and Gleason. That's it.
Hi, Scott. It's Rebecca here.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hey. I was tuning in to hear about the 53rd and Halsey and Gleason
Mhm.
locations. And when they first came out, many of the residents on 52nd expressed their opposition to it because we felt it was redirecting traffic to 52nd. And you had said that, in fact, you had heard a lot of opposition. We were one of the few neighborhoods that expressed the most opposition to this, to the street calming. So I wonder what happened to that comment period, and if there's a way for us to continue to express our dismay and opposition to that one section. So what's the process?
You're in the process right now, Rebecca.
So can I just represent the neighbors and continue
Sure.
to express our dismay? And should we all voice our opinions to a certain person, or how do we go about re-expressing our initial opposition that you had heard earlier?
I think you're doing it. You can do it however you want. What we saw was when the neighborhood said on 52nd, the neighbor said, you've been more traffic from 53rd onto 52nd with these signs. And when we did traffic counts, which I think I'm showing in my screen, are you all seeing those traffic counts up, the Excel spreadsheet, or is it not showing that?
No, I'm seeing it.
Right. This is from 2020. The neighbor said, hey, you're driven traffic from 53rd onto 52nd with these signs. So we did the counts, and 53rd had 1,000 cars a day, and 52nd had about 500 cars a day. So we were seeing half as much traffic on the street that is not the neighborhood greenway as the street that's the neighborhood greenway. So I understand, Rebecca, that 52nd Avenue neighbors didn't like the signs on 53rd. And there was issues in the past with the 50s bikeway using 53rd instead of 52nd. Neighborhood greenway is 53rd. And we didn't see any evidence of pushing traffic onto 52nd, nor did we, see any speeds that were an issue on 52nd. So we considered, I moved on from that issue. I didn't know that the 52nd neighbors hadn't, but.
But
We have not.
Scott,
There's
that
still
was just,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rebecca, that I just have a question about these counts. This is from June 9th, 2020 through June 11th, 2020. Do you have something prior to that? Because even though it's half, 52nd is half of what 53rd is, that 234 and 284 cars could be 3 times what traffic normally was. So indeed, some of it could have been switched to 52nd. You don't have a comparison.
It could be. I don't think we had a recent count on 52nd, but even if it was 3 times, going from 200 to 500 cars a day at 19 or 20 miles an hour, it's considered well within range of what a local street, how it would operate, especially if the street next to it, the neighborhood greenway, is operating at twice as much traffic.
But the neighbors who live there and their perception is
I understand the perception, but we can't manage the traffic based on that perception. I mean, we're managing the traffic based on what our priorities are based on our transportation system plan. And so that's a local street, 52nd, and it's operating as we would really expect a local street to operate, with very low amounts of traffic and speeds at 20 miles an hour.
Scott, one thing in your count, this is when everything was locked down as far as with COVID.
Yeah.
And so the futsal wasn't working. This is also during the summer months when the school is not in session, Head Start. Yeah. And so those are 2 counts that are actually not being shown as what is typical for that street.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, 53rd is actually probably half the traffic that would be there normally. But this is when I heard from the neighbors. We put in slow streets on May 7th of 2020, and the 52nd neighbors, you might remember, they even got on the news. So when they contacted me, I said, yeah, I'll take counts and see how things are looking out there. And so this is that count from when I heard back from them, and then saw from the data that there really wasn't an issue. There wasn't an increase in traffic or diversion from traffic from 53rd to 52nd. I mean, even if there was an increase in 52nd, which I don't think there was, you're still seeing twice as much traffic on the neighborhood greenway. So that doesn't really, the narrative of that there's a diversion of traffic from 53rd to 52nd, and yet there's twice as much on 53rd, that doesn't really make any sense. So it just doesn't, the data doesn't square with the fact that there's more traffic. I understand that people didn't like the signs and felt that it was diverting traffic to their street, but the data doesn't show that that is the case.
So I think that's why I asked what the process is, because we just disagree with this decision, and we've expressed that disagreement and would like to know what our next step could be. I mean, does that mean we go to the council?
I mean, Rebecca, you're welcome to express your discontent with the decision anywhere that you want. I've recorded this, and then I went and did the data to come back and talk to you guys, and then I've come to this meeting, neighborhood meeting, several times to talk about slow streets and its next steps. So this is part of the process, is for you to say that you don't agree with the data. And I mean, I don't have a place to go from here except to say, this is what the data shows, and this is the decision we've made to move forward. We don't see any evidence that slow streets diverts traffic to other streets. And its goal is not to divert traffic to other streets. Its goal is to slow vehicles turning onto the neighborhood greenway and to raise awareness about the uses on that neighborhood greenway. So there's nothing in the infrastructure that would actually divert traffic to another street, especially in this more permanent version, which doesn't even have a sign that says local access only. It just is showing that it's a shared street with slower speeds. So, I mean, again, you could go to council, you can do all the things that people do to express their concerns or unhappiness with the decision. But I don't think there's not a lot of traction, I think, behind the fact that the 52nd neighbors think that this is diverting traffic onto their street.
Should the counts be redone in a more normative period, since that was an abnormal period of time when you did this?
Well, I don't
given
think
the
so,
COVID.
because there's
Tamara just brought up, it was the height of COVID restrictions and school issues. So, and
Sure,
futsal not being open. Maybe now that things are reopening, maybe those counts might show something different if they were redone.
I mean, they very well may, but the point, I think, is that the infrastructure itself is not causing on 52nd. So nothing that we're putting in is causing people to drive on 52nd. And in fact, what I'm proposing is even less likely to divert traffic, because there's not going to be a local access sign only. So I think we could redo the count again, but I think what we, even if the count showed that there was some change, we would say, well, now we're going to put something else in that should actually help, mitigate that issue. So I think if, once we put the hardened center line in, the plastic yellow posts with the shared street signs, I'd be happy to take counts after those go in and see how 52nd and 53rd are operating. But I think we will find that it's very similar and that there's not very many cars.
I think you're saying some very valid stuff, Scott, but I think that I think there'd been a baseline prior that would make the argument more solid. And I think that's what Sharon was saying. If there was a baseline before the signs went in that showed and compared that it was still 500 cars on 52nd, then then it would, and maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But I think if that baseline were there, it would support the hypothesis.
Do we have any counts of the number of pedestrians, skateboarders, bicyclists that are using this and the other streets that are blocked off? Or I won't say blocked off, but that you have the signage on. I mean, we talk about the number of cars, but how many people are actually walking in the street? How many bicyclists are actually going down the street? How many rollers are going down the street?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we have some old counts from when we used to do volunteer counts, but unfortunately we don't have an easy automated way to count people. So our counts for cars are using hoses, and those can separate out people that are biking. I don't have a recent one for 53rd, and I don't have any for 52nd. We probably do have some on other places, but most of our bike counts come from manual people counts. They stand out on the street and they count at the peak period, and then we calculate using general traffic operations principles around peak hour traffic. We haven't done that since 2019, because of the pandemic, but we do have estimates from 2019.
Excuse me, I want to make sure that we have the name of the person who spoke. Last four digits of their phone number is 6035.
That's me, Ben Joy. Sorry, I dialed in. I didn't. My headphones wouldn't
That's
connect
you.
to my
Okay.
laptop.
I wanted to make sure. Okay, got it. Thanks.
I thought Ben had an amazing way of syncing up with whoever lives. It was really it was quite shocking at first, and then I figured it out. It takes a minute slower, but
Yeah.
So I'll just say lastly on 52nd and 53rd, I agree. I wish we had a baseline on 52nd from 2019 or 2018, but I had no idea that there was going to be a pandemic or an issue that all of a sudden the people on 52nd were going to be upset about the 53rd neighborhood greenway. So we didn't have a count from beforehand, but I do think that this count from 2020 provides a good snapshot of what was happening on 53rd and what was happening on 52nd. I think you can deduce from this data that 53rd is still the more heavily traveled street, despite it being the street where we're trying to prioritize people biking and walking. So I think I think based on that, there's not really an issue on 52nd. I mean, if anything, we have an issue on 53rd is what this data is saying. But that's not the issue at hand at this moment.
I think too that 53rd, has the street calming. They have circles and speed bumps. 52nd doesn't have any of that. So
yeah,
I get that you're saying data supports your decision, but certainly as a resident on the street, it has changed completely. And not only Futsal, but when we noticed it when the street calming went in and people went around trying to figure out why we're getting so much traffic. So there is a difference. And I think that's why neighbors are so wholeheartedly opposed to the street calming on 53rd.
Maybe Scott is not aware of the issues that have happened regarding the futsal. I mean, there were a lot of complaints, so he may not be aware that 52nd is a sensitized street already. with large amounts of traffic, speeding, congestion, I think parking issues also. So, you know, we've heard them as in the land use committee and the neighborhood association over the last, 5 years? Would you say, Tamara, 5, 6 years? And so the people on 52nd have had their troubles. So to have anything additional is difficult.
Can I chime in
Before I
something real
moved
quick?
up to Sacramento, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I guess my question is around, and it's kind of to the whole group, which is if the signage caused more traffic to go from 53rd to 52nd, presumably if there was not signage, those cars would be on 53rd. I think that's the assertion. And what I'm seeing there is that would be also very problematic, because that is supposed to be a greenway where there's supposed to be people biking and walking and taking advantage of the space. And so I guess I really appreciate, Rebecca, what you're saying around traffic, and I've got pets and dogs and I'm always scared with cars zooming by. But the implication is that there would be more traffic on the greenway if we didn't have the signage. And it seems like that's also problematic. And I'm just kind of curious what people's thoughts are about that.
One comment here, you've got at 53rd, you've got a overpass over the freeway. So it's naturally going to get more traffic. And because the overpasses are spaced out, anytime you have a big area, like when we were talking about the park, spaced out, and you've got a route that's through there, you're going to get some traffic through there. I mean, I personally don't use that street, but I did the other day because Gleason was so backed up. I mean, it was unreal how Gleason was backed up. It was clear backed up from 60th to 53rd. So I turned down 53rd to come over to Halsey.
I would add a comment. Before my wife and I moved up to 64th in Sacramento, where now we have this going on, we lived at 1311 Northeast 52nd. And George Smith's warehouse sales and Providence Home Health would shove trucks down 52nd, and traffic was a problem on 52nd. I would be the guy that would call up and yell at Providence, who's now my employer, and say, get your trucks off my street. So I don't know the answer for 52nd. That industrial pocket down there by Fraser Park has often been an issue, sadly. I don't know. I just say that because I'm thinking how my 24 years I'm dealing with this same stuff. So.
In answer to your question, Zach, 53rd is a more natural thoroughfare and it has 2 roundabouts in there. I think that's a more natural spot for cars and greenway combination, as opposed to the more quiet street 52nd to the west. That would be my opinion.
I also hear that Scott is willing to, if we set up what they call barriers with the poles for 53rd and Halsey. The treatment is actually not a whole barricade at that intersection, and I don't think it's going to be a whole barricade at the intersection of Irving and 52nd as well. So if those go in, maybe after that there could be a traffic count done and come back to us with that.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do a count after we do the next round of installations to see how the streets are operating. And I just put in the chat, we did actually, somebody did have foresight before the pandemic and took a count on 52nd. Traffic dropped on 52nd after the slow street signs went in. So perception can be tricky. I mean, when the pandemic started, the city went kind of ghost town. And then when traffic did start picking up, I know I felt it on my street. I was working from home all of a sudden and I could hear every car rattle by that I didn't pay attention to beforehand. And it felt like traffic had picked up. but what 50-second experience actually was a reduction in traffic after slow streets went in on 53rd compared to pre-pandemic. So it's,
What year was that?
It was in 2019. I
Yeah,
put and everybody can look at our traffic data. We have 10 years of our traffic data. Not our COVID counts aren't on there because COVID counts are considered abnormal. So we don't post the abnormal counts, but every weekday count that we have from the last 10 years is on that website that I posted in the chat. And so you can go up and look up all the same data that I'm looking up. You can see when 50 happened. You can see that any of the information that we generally have. The traffic engineers can somehow get to a deeper level if they use our ArcMap system. They can see like each hour and they can send that stuff to me. But this is the data that I typically use to look at streets, is just the publicly available stuff.
Well, 900 cars a day on 50 seconds sounds like an awful lot. And that kind of confirms what I was saying. It's a problem street, and the people who live there are sensitized. We've heard complaints for years, 5 to 6 years about that street, and especially after the Rose City Futsal went in.
When did the Rose
That's a
City
big
Futsal go
problem.
in?
Gosh, Tamara, it's been I would say 5 years.
So I guess my question is how—
You're muted, Tamara.
Oh,
Tamara,
sorry,
you're muted.
Tamara.
I think it was 5 or 6 years ago.
That's what
When
I'm.
George Smith moved out.
Okay, so I guess what I would say is I hear that there's neighbors that live on 52nd that have been dealing with what they consider to be traffic safety issues or inconveniences for years. I don't see how it's related to slow streets at all. And so there doesn't seem to be any connection. And so I don't doubt that neighbors on 52nd would like to have less traffic and lower traffic on their street. You'd find me somebody in the city that wants to have more faster traffic on their street. But 52nd, even before the pandemic, had less than 1,000 cars a day, which is our goal for our priority safe routes to school, our neighborhood greenways. Its speeds were about 20 miles an hour. Also our goal for our priority safe routes to school, our neighborhood greenways. And so, the streets that I, deal with other capacity in working on traffic calming on cut through routes, we're talking about, thousands of cars a day going, 35 miles an hour. And so I'm not saying that what people experience on 52nd isn't real or isn't bothersome to them, but compared to the traffic safety issues we have in the rest of the city, it doesn't measure up. It doesn't appear to operate in a way that is not outside of what we would expect from a local street. So I don't have a lot of things I can do to help, especially when I see that slow streets didn't increase the traffic on the street, and the street that we really want to focus on next door actually operates with more cars. So that's kind of where I'm at with 52nd and streets.
Can you do the traffic count before you put in the barriers? Because once those barriers are in, they would be very difficult to remove.
It would not be difficult to remove. They're just plastic curbs bolted into the ground.
Difficult for the neighbors to get the city to remove them.
No, I
Not
will.
physically difficult to remove them.
If we put them in and we find after the counts that they have somehow driven more traffic to 52nd and 53rd, there's an issue, I will work with the neighbors on 52nd to either improve that street or to remove what's on 53rd. I mean, that's what we do for neighborhood greenways. When we put a new neighborhood greenway in, if it pushes traffic on a street too high, we add speed bumps to that street to make it operate the same as the neighborhood greenway. But I'm just not seeing anything that we're doing to 53rd is going to do anything like that to 52nd.
Hey, Kelly, you've got that down in minutes, right? Okay.
Does Rebecca
think
have
that seems
anything
like
else to say?
That seems like a really fair statement, that if the data supports that it didn't meet its objective, that you would back off on it and help support that. That seems very fair.
Gary,
Scott?
yes.
Since we've kind of beat this one to death now, I still have a grave concern about putting a concrete barrier in the middle of the street. And I'm going back maybe 25 years ago when somebody smashed into one of the traffic circles that had a barrier or something like that. I believe it was on 33rd. They sued the city and they won. So I'm saying that the city is liable if somebody smashes into one of these things and is injured or killed or something like that, because it's a barrier in the middle of the street. I'm not talking about the little curbs. I'm talking about actually a concrete barrier that's in the middle of the street. And you add this LED lighting that is absolutely horrible and at night, and you add somebody coming along with their bright headlights on, which I was on Tillamook today and I couldn't see a thing because somebody had their bright headlights on until I passed the car. And I mean, there's a liability issue there, and there's a safety issue there about putting concrete barriers in the middle of the street. And I won't go any farther with it, but I mean, I'm very concerned about it.
Okay, well, the traffic engineers and our city attorneys aren't, so.
You know, the city gets sued every day too. You know,
Terry, somebody sued McDonald's for hot coffee and won. I mean, we live in the United States. I don't run my traffic calming program based on, what people do, suing us. They sue us all the time.
yeah, but this could be an injury or a life, is what I'm saying.
Well, if the city attorney is willing to go with it, I think that's what we have to go with as far as, restrictions. I know it makes no sense in some ways, but it also might eventually lead to something better as far as the design.
Well, what happens if the city does get sued is they have their own independent engineers, and I worked in a plaintiff's personal injury law firm, and this was done often. There are many defects that are found despite the city engineer's best view at the time, or the city attorneys. They don't spend their time looking at these types of things. So they have an independent analysis, and then they go to court and duke it out. And you're right. Sometimes the injured party does win. So, let's not be cavalier in the statement just because the city engineers say it's okay, that means it's 100% safe. It's not necessarily that way, or that the attorneys say it's okay. It doesn't mean a thing to an injury. So
let me throw one
if
other
there
thing
are
out.
concerns, you might look at it.
Let me throw one other thing out. Are you looking at the lighting where you're putting these in, and maybe putting in some better lighting? Like I said, I think that I personally think that the city made a big mistake when they put in the LED type lights, because the lighting on the streets, particularly on the non-thoroughfare streets, is horrible. I mean, I've got a street light on the pole in front of my house. It used to light it up about 3 lots down. Now it lights it up under the pole, period.
Well, because we're adding reflective elements to all of the features that go in, it should only help illuminate the street. So we're not doing a lighting assessment for all of these, but each of these have reflective elements, more than one, including this.
Like I said earlier, when you've got something that's coming at you, headlights that are coming at you, and I wear glasses. I didn't notice it so much when I didn't wear glasses, but you can't necessarily see past that headlight that's coming at you until you pass it, particularly if, like tonight, with somebody had their bright lights on, and actually they were parked with their bright lights on. So I bared it for about 2 or 3 blocks.
Anya, you had.
Yeah. One thing I will comment, like, for example, to his lighting question is where the concrete barrier is planned to go at 70th and Sacramento. There is a street light right above that that illuminates. It's one of the new LEDs, and it illuminates that whole intersection quite well. And the nice thing is it illuminates that intersection but it doesn't illuminate any of the neighborhood houses.
Mhm, mhm.
So I have to differ in opinion on the value of the new LED designs quite a bit.
So Tamara, could we move to talk a little bit about the 64th and Sacramento solution there, which Ben and others are interested in?
You're
muted,
that,
Tamara.
Kelly.
You're muted. There you go.
I would like that very much. If
Scott, do you have
everyone's
something that
willing.
shows what that intersection would look like with your concrete planters, barriers, something?
Well, it's not very graphically interesting, but it is kind of the traffic plan. I can show that to you. Give me just one sec to pull it up.
Because Ben, there's barrels there, or there's barrels there now.
No, there's
Candlesticks.
plastic sticks and yellow paint.
Okay.
For the slow streets thing, Ben,
I'm sorry?
the slow streets have the, are those orange barrels there or sandwich signs for the slow streets project, not the crosswalk project, the slow streets project? We're talking about.
No, there's none of those up there.
Okay.
Not currently.
There's some sandwich signs that say slow streets, don't there?
Correct. There's the sandwich signs that have been out there for a year and a half or so.
Right.
Okay. Well, this is proposing to have a barricade or one of those triangular concrete pylons put in there.
Right in front of Jenny's house, isn't it, I think?
I wish. I would love traffic calming in front of my house, but no.
Different Jenny.
Jenny Johnson.
All right, I can share the oh, wait, where'd it go? Here, let me
You
share.
put a picture up earlier.
So here's Sacramento. Here's kind of, I think the red here is outlining the painted curb extension, but I'm not 100% sure if that's what that red line is indicating. This here, slow streets will be. It'll be outlined in yellow and there'll be two of the barrels like I showed you before.
Really? Why are they there?
They're on Sacramento. To keep because they serve to slow the turns down as people are coming through here and raise that awareness. So they're just out here in the center line.
Oh,
This
never
is
seen those.
current? This is current or this?
Yeah,
is
this is the
proposed?
first I've ever
No.
heard of this.
This is what it will look like. When
Oh, boy.
it'll be in the middle of Sacramento at this kind of location here. Here's Brzee coming in, here's 64th.
These are where the two triangular barriers, concrete barriers are gonna be with 15 mile per hour.
Yep,
poles.
they'll be in the middle of the street here. They'll be like where, imagine there would be a center line here. This is the street. This is, the travel lane eastbound. This is the travel lane westbound.
Oh, this is the first we've heard of this.
No, well, this is on the website for slow streets. They show there's no detail, but it just shows a marker of where it will be.
I've never seen this.
I haven't either. And
Oh,
I've got a question
We-
can
here.
I?
We
Go
thought
ahead.
it was gonna be
Sorry.
running across Sacramento, north and south. We didn't think it was running a barrier east and west. We
Yeah,
thought it was,
it
and
looks
is
like
this,
Lombard.
is that the same thing that's gonna happen down at the other end, the east end of it, down at 70th in Sacramento? Can't hear you.
Here's 70th. So the
Yep.
black circle is the planter, the yellow is just the paint. So
Oh,
you know,
oh,
you can imagine now that you have your slow streets,
Oh,
the temporary location, you have an orange barrel in the middle, and then you have the signs on the outside. So this will just have it all now in the middle here where like the orange barrel is. And there'll be some pavement markings around it to kind of highlight how people are supposed to go through. And then this black circle in the middle, you know, we're looking at a plan view, so we're looking down at it. So you're looking down at where the orange barrel essentially is now. This is now the concrete barrel with the signs. This is Sacramento running, you know, east-west, and here's 70th as it kind of goes up to the north.
and it's all painted out right now on the street. It's all marked
Yeah.
for installation. So I assume it is down just west of 64th as well, as I recall. So you can actually visually see where those barriers are going to be at this point.
Yeah, so on this
And-
one,
and
right?
Scott, just a note on your mail notification, it pretty clearly states that the barrier will be just west of 64th Avenue.
Okay, and that's right, and that is correct, right? I'm cardinal direction challenged despite my profession.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, good.
well, I had no idea it was going to be there. I thought it was going to be on the
It's gonna be up here?
east side of 64th.
Oh,
East side of 64th, in front of that corner house where they've got a red triangle in front of
Mhm.
that corner house is already painted out, and there was going to be a barrel or a planter right there,
right here.
just to the south of that painted red triangle, which
Oh,
technically is the beginning of the slow streets. At least visually for us, that's where the sandwich signs have been,
mm-mm.
not where you have the current planter at.
I think this is the wrong place. I would love to share some visuals I put together and some comments of why I think this is not good.
Okay, sure.
May I share my screen? Figure out how to get, sorry, on my laptop, I got to get that. Bear with me. Trying to show PowerPoint. God, it's not going to let me do it.
Kelly, can he share his screen? Do you have to do something?
Oh boy, Smack is not letting me do it. I'm going to log in from my PC, and I'll be at a screen hog with 3 logins. I apologize. Bear with me just a second.
It just looks like there's more people at the meeting.
We're trying to stack the deck here.
Scott, well, Scott, and I want to say I agree with the goals of your program. I'm not necessarily. It says it needs somebody's got to let me in.
Hey, Scott, maybe while Ben is bringing his screen up, I just had a quick question for you. In as far as doing this slow street program on Sacramento, one of the, through appearances and perception, one of the big traffic concerns is that cut through traffic coming up, through the golf course. And since the A-frames went up, a year and a half ago, it's always been interesting that there weren't any A-frames or any kind of traffic slowing put down at the bottom of the golf course on 72nd Drive. So it seemed like we tried to slow traffic from each end of Sacramento, but we didn't try to slow the traffic that was coming into the neighborhood from that other, proposed, busy street. As we talked earlier, 1,000 cars in one direction a day.
And
I was just
literally,
curious why, that would be considered as part of this project, because we're talking about a three-legged stool here in a sense.
yeah, because we literally would see people come up through the golf course, and as they would go past the A-frames, turn and look over their shoulder to see what's going on with the street, and am I somewhere I'm not supposed to be driving? And they're not aware that it's a slow street, but because they come in from a sideway.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. I mean, when we did slow streets, we only focused on neighborhood greenways. And so there are some limitations to that because you've got a street like 72nd Drive, really feeds into the neighborhood greenway, and there's nowhere else to go. But I think, at this point, I think you're right, but at this point, I think we're kind of past that. We're moving beyond those things. And then the 70s project is going to really change how 72nd Drive operates. So I think that
So
there
take
are
all
those
the
changes
A-frames.
coming, but sorry.
We'll
say
just
that
take
again?
all those A-frames and barrels that are collecting over the top of the hill and put them down there at the golf course, right?
Okay, I'm ready if
Be
you
the
guys
first.
are ready. Okay, so what I did is I went to Slow Streets and I did a screen grab. And here's my problem. My problem is that you want to put this at 64th. And if you go back here and if you actually walk our neighborhood and you come up through the golf course right here, through the stairs, or you walk up here, this is a blind spot. And from 62nd to 64th, cars pick up speed. So you're putting this barrier, you're arbitrarily cutting off part of the golf course, and you're allowing cars to just fly through here for 2 blocks. And then you get to send them down 64th, where there's a stop sign and no signal. It really is not a good fit.
Okay, well, we're not
Second here. And then,
not sending them down 64th though. They can continue to drive on Sacramento.
but that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And then, so what I'm suggesting is, why don't you take this thing and move it back to 62nd? This is a natural thoroughfare through here, because the traffic is cutting through to Sandy Boulevard. It is doing that. And if we went 62nd, there's not a single stop sign all the way up here, and there's a traffic signal at 62nd. So you would solve, if you went here, you would solve the blind spot, you would solve the dangerous part walking out of the park, and you would solve the speed up to 64th. And not only that, I don't understand why 64th to 71st. Why not the whole golf course? It doesn't make any sense. And so if you did that, there's a more natural transition to walk the crosswalk along Brazil, instead of taking this huge thing with this monstrosity that's built in the middle of the street. You could walk 64th. There's no other crosswalks over here. Have cross, have a safe way to school, and a safe way to drive cars through the neighborhood. I don't understand why 64th became the place to put the traffic diversion. It makes more sense at 62nd.
I tend to
And then I
agree with
just have
that.
to do this because I love my neighborhood. We have yellow paint and sticks. This is what 42nd and Brazil got. They had a big open space. They got nice curbs built out. They made it look nice, and they made it look valuable like their neighborhood is. We deserve that at 64th and Brazil. And we deserve to have the crosswalk go down Brazil and the traffic go through 62nd. I agree with the goals of the program. The implementation is flawed. And I will be quiet. I know you have a tough job.
What are these pictures of, Ben?
This is 42nd in Brazil. I
Wisteria.
recognize it.
Wisteria.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Wisteria. 42nd in Wisteria. Yeah. I
Yeah,
knew
they did-
somebody
yeah.
that lived right around the corner at one time.
They did great work out here. And I mean, this was a part of a paving project and was funded through our Fixing Our Streets program, which had money passed by the voters. This was one of the projects that was voted upon by the voters. So, that's how this happened. I think had we paved Sacramento or something, and we had it in the voter approved, gas tax package, we could have done something better. But, safe routes to school is often shorted on these kind of things. And so, we put in the best that we could with the money that we had to do the crossing. Without,
But we could still be safer if we went down Brazil and drove them up.
I was just
62nd.
about to say, Ben, I don't think that this is a bad idea at all. So I'm going to go back to the traffic engineer and talk to him and see if we can, I mean, maybe I've just missed this feedback, because I have gotten a lot of feedback, but I feel like this is the first time anybody has specifically said to me, this should move from 64th to 62nd, and here's why. because I can see the sense in it. And so, if I've ignored somebody's feedback, I apologize, but it's the first time that I'm hearing it or remembering that I'm hearing it. So I'm happy to go back to
Scott,
that
I would
engineering
meet
and
with
look at
you
it
and
more.
I'm sorry, there's a delay and I apologize for cutting you off. I would
No,
meet
no
with
worries.
you and your team to walk the neighborhood to show you why this feels more natural and safer. And I agree with the goals of the program. And I think this just is a more natural, and I want to be, I don't want to be the person who says not in my backyard. That's not why I'm saying it. I think there are solid, safe reasons not related to going down my street. I think 60 second with a traffic signal, the traffic is going to go that way. It slows the cars. If you came out here, if you put out your traffic strips, they fly from 62nd to 64th. I yell at cars, when I'm walking my dog. It would be a more natural stop the speed from going through there. Even if we didn't address the paint and the sticks at 64th, this makes more sense.
Do you think there'll be people on 62nd that'll be concerned that they'll feel like cars are being routed up their street that don't even have any stop signs? I mean, that seems to be.
Well, so it took the brunt when 58 and when you couldn't go out 57th across Alameda, all the traffic went to 62nd anyway. That's the only way to get out safely from our neighborhood any longer, is you drive Alameda and you turn, you go 62nd, you go to the light. That has happened already. And there's no stop signs from Alameda, I'm the wrong street, from Sacramento all the way to Sandy. There are 0 stop signs so cars can go through there. And there is a signal at Sandy Boulevard.
There's no stop signs in the north-south direction. There are east-west.
Correct.
Yeah. No,
Stop
I
signs
see that.
at
Thank you
each
for
one
that
of those
clarification.
intersections. Each one of those. I live 1 block away on 61st. There may be some concerns on 62nd with some increased traffic, maybe. But it is like 53rd. It is a more natural thoroughfare from Sacramento to Sandy Boulevard, especially with the traffic light there. So I do agree with Ben. Back
I
to
agree with him
64th
too.
and Brazil. The lady that came to talk to us said that crosswalk project there was through a Fix the Streets program.
Yes, it was
Right.
funded from Fixing Our Streets, but the way that Fixing Our Streets for Safe Routes to School didn't provide a project specific funds like 42nd. So I was addressing the 42nd and Wisteria. So that was a paving project that had to build the curb ramps, and Safe Routes to School got, like an allotted fund for each entire high school cluster. So there's like 8 high school clusters, and each cluster got a pot of money to try to make improvements. So we didn't have like a Fixing Our Streets 64th and Brazil project. We had a Fixing Our Streets Madison. Sorry, I don't remember the new name of Madison.
Safe Routes to School.
Yeah,
McDaniel.
McDaniel. Thank you. We got a McDaniel pot of money, and it was like, here's your $800,000. Do your safety improvements for McDaniel cluster, which, as you know, draws from quite an area. So it's not to say that it didn't come from Fixing Our Streets, that it just didn't have a very specific project like 42nd and Wisteria did, which was a paving project, which has to redo the concrete corners when we do it, essentially, if they don't meet ADA, which none of them do. So that's why I was just trying to explain to why 42nd and Wisteria got what it got, and why 64th and Brazil got what it got.
Okay, one more thing at 62nd and Sacramento. That is a difficult street, Sacramento, to cross from the north side of Sacramento to the south side to access the stairs to go down to the park. A lot of families come with their kids. They want to go down and play in the park and hang out there. And so if there was a crosswalk across Sacramento, north-south, that would be very helpful. And there is a property owner on that's a T intersection there. So it would be on the northeast corner of the intersection, who has got quite a bit of vegetation way too high for that intersection for visibility. That needs to be cut back. A small kid would easily not be seen behind the vegetation there. So it's a difficult intersection, but if you're going to start that barrier, the Slow Streets project there, that it needs a little attention at that intersection with perhaps a crosswalk and vegetation removal.
You're just talking a painted crosswalk, right?
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Something
that
so
makes
that
sense.
people know to stop for people who want to
Yeah.
get the stair to the stairs.
So Scott, on Ben's comments about the idea of moving the barricades or basically the start of the street slowing down to 60-second, I mean, I absolutely agree with them. And in relation to, there's the pedestrian stairs coming up from the park. It's a natural place for this slowing to begin on Sacramento. And this is coming from the folks on the opposite end of the corridor, but I walk that regularly. It makes absolute sense to move it farther down, and it really engages another couple blocks of the neighborhood where families and everyone on the street are often walking to those stairs. So I think this makes perfect sense. And yeah, 60-second, I think they're already seeing a lot of traffic anyway because of the traffic signal. That's a natural path out of the neighborhood. So
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone's going to feel like they're being more traffic's necessarily being redirected.
I don't want to get greedy here, but Scott, maybe you can tell us about budget and money, but is it possible to do both? The reason I ask is Ben makes a really good point. 62nd to 64th. I mean, Sacramento is so wide. It's like a freeway. People feel like they can just fly, and it's an infrastructure problem. It's too wide. You get in your car and you feel like you're going at normal speed, but you're going 35 or 40 and there's people everywhere. So if we put it on 62nd, that's going to still have the problem of people are going to get past the barrier and then let it loose. And so if it's possible, it'd be awesome to do 62nd and 64th as a reminder of what that road needs to be, which is slower.
Yeah, there's no reason we can't do both. I mean, I agree.
Barriers at both 62nd and 64th.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an either or. I could add one at 62nd, and in fact, that might be easier, frankly, no, it wouldn't be easier. We could do both. It'd only be easier for me because I hate to go back to the traffic engineering team and tell them, hey guys, I messed up and we need to move this. But if I go back to them and said, hey guys, I heard feedback and we want to do another one, they don't get as snippy at me. But I totally see the sense of 62nd. It makes a lot of sense, as does a crosswalk there. So I mean, I think we could keep both unless there was compelling reason not to do 64th, but I do think the width of the street this would help narrow the street and help slow some vehicles as they continue on the path. So yeah, I'd appreciate that, Ben, if you send that to me. You have my email address, right?
I agree
absolutely, I will.
I agree with Ben about moving it. I'm not so sure about the 64th because that whole intersection that Peabody has made such a mess of it right now. And I don't know, looking at your overview, it doesn't show the crosswalk. It just shows lines. I know the neighbors don't like the candlesticks there. They want something else. That whole thing needs to be redesigned. And so just to stick the barrels there without doing some of the other redesign that I understand the neighbors want, I don't think is right. I mean, I certainly agree with moving the barrel or the thing to 62nd, but when we're talking about 64th and Brazee and Sacramento, there's a lot more work there that needs to be done than just setting the barrels down there. And I think that whole thing needs to be relooked at. And that was my understanding, that it was going to be relooked at because the neighbors were complaining they don't want those plastic straw candlesticks.
Terry, I want to acknowledge that I have definitely heard people who have been critical of that intersection, but I also want to acknowledge that I love that change. I feel safer
You don't
with
live right there. You don't live right there. That's the point. It's the people that
Terry,
live there that don't like it.
I appreciate that. I also use the streets. I have a 2-month-old strapped to my chest, or I'm in my bike with my kid, and I go through there multiple times a week, if not every day of the week. And I take a bit of offense when you say that my opinion doesn't matter because I don't live right there. I use those streets too, Terry.
Well, I use
So,
those
Zach,
streets too when I drive on them.
Okay,
And you're saying my
Zach,
opinion doesn't
you're right.
matter.
The young families who live around there definitely want something to make it safer. Absolutely. I would love it if we slowed down. Leave what's
I'm
there.
not saying that. I'm just saying,
Terry, stop interrupting,
I-
please.
I would ask Scott, I would save the money on adding anything additional at 64th. Leave what's there until we can have a better longer term solution for what's there that's more permanent. And I bring up those pictures of Wisteria because I think they did it right. And I would rather wait to redo that when the budget was there than do more Band-Aids on it. The young parents, my kids grew up there. We walked through there. We made it through. It's a different world. There's more cars. People are crazier. Everybody's wound up tight. We need something to address it. But I would not spend any more money on it until we had a permanent fix, and I would move it to 62nd. That's me.
and that's
What do you
what I agree
mean?
with, Ben. Then that's what
No,
I
do
agree
you-
with too.
I didn't understand what you said, Ben. Do you mean not put the barriers there at 64th?
I would not put
That's
the
what you're
barriers at
talking about.
64th. Correct. I would go back and put them
Okay,
at
so
62nd.
the additional expense you're talking about is don't put additional barriers at 64th, but move the barriers to 62nd. Would you
and
still
put a
like to
crosswalk
see,
at 62nd.
right, and would you like to see some change right at 64th and Brazil for what they did with the yellow paint and the candlesticks?
Yes, I would love a more permanent solution, and it may not be reasonable to try and put everything into one ask like this. Maybe it's a year down the road, maybe it's 2 years down the road where we can plan something more permanent. Because anyway, pick your
Okay.
battles. I would rather not put more at 64th, move it to 62nd, and hold off until we can address a permanent solution on 64th.
And that's what I was trying to say, Ben.
Okay, so actually the discussion about the candlestick mess at 64th and Brazil is actually the next topic that we're going to talk about. And I don't know if Scott is privy to what has gone in there. But what I hear in this discussion is moving the barricade to 62nd. And do we want to make a motion on that as a committee?
I will make a motion to do that.
Before we
Alright.
make that, I would be curious to hear just a little bit more. I mean, the motion of moving it there is one. There's another option, which is asking to do both. What I'm hearing from Scott is doing both may actually be easier to do. I don't know what the expense is. Scott, you can probably enlighten us of doing both versus just one and moving it.
I mean, there's obviously more cost to doing both. It's not easier to do both or one. The easiest thing for me is not to change anything. So don't worry about me. I would say, and the additional expense of adding one or leaving one it's nominal in the overall, project budget to put in. We're trying to do 80 locations. Well, we were trying to do 80 locations by the end of 2021, but Slow Streets is moving more slowly than I had anticipated. So, we're trying to do 80 locations. Adding an additional location, number 81, is not going to be an issue. And I've heard from other neighborhoods who've asked me to add places, and I've added them without. It's not like you get 5 and you have to choose. If I come to you and say there's 5, and you say, well, there's a 6th one that we think makes sense, and it makes sense for the program. That's generally what we've been trying to do is meet neighborhoods where they say they want things. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you want 62nd and 64th, we can do it. Or if you want to move 64th to 62nd, we can probably do that. I need to talk to the project team, but I don't see a reason why it couldn't happen. But, I would definitely follow back up with you if there was an issue with that.
Well, I'd make a motion then that we ask for an additional one at 60 second, as has been kind of outlined in his PowerPoint.
Yeah, but I made my motion first. I suggest
think-
we take a poll, a straw poll.
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor, so we have to follow up with that unless, but it wasn't seconded.
Well, I don't think it was before the motion came up before all the questions were really answered for clarity. So if I could, to Zach's point, the option of leaving the barricade at 64th or moving it to 62nd, or going ahead to help slow traffic even further, to Scott's point, maybe easier for him to put 2 barricades in is a possibility there. The talk that Ben brought up about the corner of Brazil and 64th is actually a separate issue. It doesn't have to do with anything to do with Scott's project here. So that shouldn't have any bearing on whether a barricade is at 64th, in Sacramento, as far as the street slowing thing. So it seemed like it got a little muddied there as the motion was starting to come into play. So what I was just wanting to make sure we're clear on is that the idea of, hey, there could be 2 barricades at the end there, could further slow traffic now. At some point in time when there's a different budget, a different opportunity to address the actual issues at 64th and Brazil and Sacramento, perhaps all that will change. And that would be a different time when something can really be done right there. But right now, the idea is slow the traffic down. If we can get 2 barricades at that end of the street, it only helps the neighborhood. Is just from what I see from our east end. So with
Okay.
that,
We can always waste more of PBOT's money by putting in 2. I mean, that's the way I see it. PBOT
think
spends
we
a lot
heard-
of money that they turn around and tear out.
Okay,
Yeah.
we
Well,
heard from
There
you.
was a question, and this has been addressed over a couple of meetings with the lady whose name starts with an A, is to have the Slow Streets project and the Fix the Street project with the intersection there and the crosswalk to coordinate efforts to have a more visually pleasing area. It is a destination area. Tourists come, they park there, they look at Mount Hood. This is not an ugly spot of town just because we're further east. I'm glad that Wisteria and 42nd has a lovely area. We deserve that also. To throw barriers in the street may not visually fit in with what is trying to happen with a redesign of the crosswalk at 64th and Brazil. So we were trying to have these 2 separate issues and the 2 separate people talk to each other to come up with something with the neighborhood that was more acceptable. So I personally would not want to just throw 2 barrels up there. Those are those 2 barriers. That is a new design to me. I've never seen where they were going to place those. I thought they were going where the sandwich signs were. That's what I thought. They were actually going to provide like a physical barrier from north-south across Sacramento. This is completely new. To throw those up and then an additional barrier down at 62nd, that's more expense. And that leaves, I don't know if money can cross projects, but that will leave less money or interest into redesigning 64th and Brazil. The longer you leave it there, the longer it's going to be there. We have the momentum with Alma she agreed to work with us to make an alteration. And I want to hear her project and her ideas and talk to us separately about this and get that done. I don't want to
Okay.
just leave it.
What I would like to propose is we have 2 issues on the table right now as far as whether we go with 62nd or 1 barricades at 62nd and 64th. And since we don't know what it looks like according to an engineer, why don't we have Scott walk the space and then come back to us? And then we can talk about it at that point of what he's found and whether or not even 62nd is the best option. Does that make sense? And also, maybe also make sure that the neighbors around 62nd get notified, and the visual that is being proposed for the barricades also gets noticed to the neighbors. Because it's the first time they've seen this barricade. And I think it's important for them to see what is being proposed. And you'll get a lot more information at a follow-up meeting.
Is it possible, Scott, to find out from your colleague in PBOT kind of what Sharon was saying around a whole design and how that all could work together? I mean, if we're talking like 18 months out, that would be one thing. But if you and, was it Alma, was that her name?
Abra.
Abra, and said, hey, we're trying to holistically, in a way that's visually appealing and also slows down traffic, and we could do this in the next couple months versus the next couple years. Like, can you have that conversation with her and find out if that can happen?
Yeah, I mean, Abra and I collaborate all the time, so we've talked a lot about this. There's not the options for 64th and Brzee are not. There's no funding for what happened at 42nd and Wisteria. So if anything is going to happen at 64th and Brzee, it's going to be a replacing of one kind of material with another. So replacing a candlestick with a planter or something. So it'll look very similar.
Or a low curb. Low
No,
curbs. We talked about.
Yeah, no, so no concrete, right? So it would be something like exactly what I'm proposing it for the slow streets. That would be the change of materials. I think that's probably the best we can do on the short term. And even those are not guaranteed because the expense of replacing the plastic pieces with concrete planters is not insignificant for the size of the intersection at Brzee. So that's the conversations we had. So as far as what slow streets would look like versus what the 60 Brzee crosswalk and painted intersection would look like, the materials, the upgraded materials would be exactly the same. So anything we did at 64th would fit right into anything we would update at 64th and Brzee in the short term.
Scott, why don't you just, at 64th and Brzee, why don't you just leave the temporary barrels there and go ahead and put in the more permanent thing at 62nd? It's kind of a halfway compromise between actually putting something in and spending some money, because I don't like to see PBOT spend money and 2 years later rip something out. And they're doing a whole lot of that, or spend money and have cars drive over it.
Yeah, well, we do spend money maintaining the current signs right now, a lot of money. So we're trying to move away from the maintenance of maintaining the orange signs. We have a contractor that's been maintaining them for 18 months. So that's not free either. The planters that we're putting in are, they're not dowed into the road. They're just like a concrete planter with fill material in. So there's no jackhammering anything out. There's just a big truck that would come and take them and pull them up. In fact, they're so movable that we put some in, even though a BES project is coming in the next 18 months after it. They're just easy enough to push aside or move away. So these really are not a permanent. I mean, they can stay in the road for a long time. I mean, you can leave an orange barrel in the road permanently, but I mean, these are not designed to be something that's going to be poured in concrete into the middle of the road. So these could move.
Okay, we've got to move on to other topics. So the question is, what's the good of the order here? Sharon?
I agree with you, Tamara, that the neighbors at 62nd need to be notified. And so maybe Scott could come back.
I'm happy to, I've already notified the neighbors at 60 about what's coming on to Sacramento, but I'm happy to send another localized notice to them and tell them what's happening, show them the design, and get
62nd at 62nd.
At 62nd.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm already coming back to Rose City Park for the Alameda Greenway and Rose Lane Project 57. I don't think I can come back again just for 62nd, but I am happy to send the notification and talk to them and take any feedback and send the design to you all and take feedback from email. I think, we're not talking about anything, I know we're not talking about anything permanent or anything that really changes traffic operations. They really are kind of a slowing feature. And so I feel like, they don't need a ton of discussion, but I definitely would want to let people know that there's something coming at 60 seconds.
Right. And the crosswalk potentially too. Okay,
Sure, I'd
that'd
love
be
to
great.
tell them that.
Yeah, I'd love you to do that too. That'd be great.
Okay, so at this point, yes, Jenny, please.
Sorry, I know we're out of time. It's after 9. But Scott, before you leave, there are other sections of the neighborhood that are desiring of traffic calming. So I emailed you about this a little bit after the last time you came in, did a presentation. Are there, and maybe it's best to just handle this with an email after the meeting, but or some other offline conversation. But
On Broadway.
Yeah, I'd be interested in, if there's like everyone on the block supports it, or, what if there's ways to get traffic calming in places that don't meet your tests for the kind of safe routes to school type stuff. I know you did the traffic counts on my street, but.
Well, I mean, I am working at PBOT to try and find a way to allow neighbors to raise money and work through the neighborhood association to pay for traffic calming or pay for part of it. It's something we used to have at PBOT a long time ago that was shuttled. And I would like to bring it back out of the basement. So that's the best I can offer right now, because we do have so much need in the city, and your location didn't, meet the as highest speeds or volumes that we have elsewhere. Similar to Rebecca in 52nd, I want everybody in the city that wants a speed bump to be able to get a speed bump, but the city can't pay for every one of those speed bumps. So I'm actively trying to find ways to let neighbors be a part of helping us, make the streets slower. And so that's the best I can really offer at this point, but I am definitely trying to work on it.
Okay, so just like call you in a year.
Sooner than that.
Let me go ahead, Jenny. I just want to see a straw poll of those people that are in favor of just a barricade, not barricade. What is it called?
It's okay. You can call it a barricade. You can call it a barricade.
Slow street indicator at 60 seconds only. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. And okay, how about at 62nd and 64th? Raise your hand. 1, 2. Okay, so that gives you some idea. We're split of where we're at. And I think, I'm not sure if we want to go ahead and make a formal recommendation at this point. What do you think, Kelly?
I think Scott needs to go to his traffic engineers and report back to us, and then we'll communicate that to the board and committee, and then we'll let other people know that are interested and make a decision from there.
Sounds good. Okay, so if you could go ahead and send out notice and let us know, let's coordinate that and give us your thoughts, and we'll bring it back to this meeting for more discussion with everyone. How's that?
Sounds great.
I have a quick question, Scott. I know it's late, but why did you decide to end the slow streets at 70th as opposed to 72nd in Sacramento? Where that 72nd past Roseway Heights to the stoplight is a much better thoroughfare as opposed to 70th where Anya and her husband live.
We didn't want to do
So
it.
it'd be like moving it a block to the east.
Right. Well, that's because
1 or 2 blocks to the east.
72nd is the actual neighborhood greenway. So we didn't want to, give people a decision point and say, here's use one of these 2 roads, and the one road that, one of the roads is 72nd and the other road is Sacramento. They're both greenways. So we tried to do it at a place where somebody could have the option to say, oh, I'm on this street where there's lots of people biking and walking. I should choose a different street for this trip. And we would want them to choose a street that's not also another street where people are biking and walking. So that's why we did 70th and not 72nd. And then we didn't want to do 74th because it, dead ends in Alameda, and then 77th is another.
Right.
So
Right.
we were trying to find places where people could make a decision and make that decision to not be on that street for that trip.
I see. Okay.
Okay, for the good of the order, it is after 9, which is unheard of for us. And so I would like to invite Ben to come back at our next meeting so we can talk more about what we can do as a neighborhood to improve the candlestick forest that you have at that intersection of 64th and Brazil. Sound good?
And I'm
Sorry, if
running
I'm
low on
I'd be happy
battery.
to come back.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, we can't get to the rest of the agenda tonight. If there's anything else for the good of the order, please state it right now.
Zach, did you have anything from the cut through traffic?
No,
thing you were-
I've reached out to Hardesty and Wheeler's offices a couple times and have had crickets. So I will continue that
I see.
travel. Yep. But thank you. And Ben and Anya and Brian, thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, thank
Great
you.
contribution to the
Thanks
conversation.
for coming, Scott. Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Agreed. Thanks,
Thanks,
Scott.
Terry. Yeah.
Okay.
See you guys soon. Take care.
Thanks,
Okay.
Scott.
For the good of the order, I'd like to engage a recommendation to adjourn.
So move.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
We did a good job. That's
Good
our
job.
check-in. We did a good job. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.